Finally, I have everything I need. It's perfect. Soon, the world will see. Hear me. I will call upon the great spirits of Samhain to Oh, shit. Oh. Dr. Wolfula, happy Halloween!
October's greetings, Evan. I'm sure you're keeping well with the Celtic practices of old. The Lord of the Dead must be appeased.
Of course. I'm not one to neglect such traditions. I'm setting up a little dance macabre for the spirits of Samhain right now.
I suppose that's satisfactory, but I really recommend holding a fire ritual like we did in the old days. Burning something alive will show you omens of the future, and it's also fun.
It's not a bad idea, but I'm just not sure I have everything I need for...
Speaking of which, you didn't happen to see anyone with my cursed lamp, did you? I had plans for the night that are contingent upon it.
Nope.
That's a shame.
Yeah, sorry, Doc.
A shame that I gave you a chance to tell the truth. Very well. Enjoy your dance macabre.
No, Doc, Oh, shit! We've talked about it already. Knocks in the dark, fairy tales, mystery. These are the things that make the month of October such an endlessly alluring time of year, and whenever I can find a movie that feels like a creepy tale I would hear spread amongst the kids during the Halloween season, it allows me to relive those feelings of what October felt like when I was a child. Cobweb had a limited theatrical run in 2023, released to very mixed reviews and didn't manage to break even on its production budget, and while I was aware of it when it came out, I didn't actually see it until a while after the release, but as soon as I did, I understood why it wasn't everyone's cup of tea, but I also immediately knew that this thing was like tailor-made for the kind of thing I'm always looking for when it comes to the most haunting time of year. A dark Halloween fairy tale, beautiful imagery taken straight out of an old storybook and music to match it, and a couple of genuinely freaky scare scenes to really top things off. It's not a perfect movie, but what it does well, it does so well and fits so perfectly into where I need it to that it's something I will sing the praises of every time the season comes around. So allow me to close off Spooky Month with you lovely people to tell you why I think that.
Oh, that imagination of yours, Peter.
Cobweb is a simple fairy tale story. It tells the story of Peter, a young boy with an isolated life who begins to hear a voice speaking to him from inside the walls of his bedroom. Before we get too much into the story though, I am foaming at the mouth to talk about the thing that makes this movie so at home during this time of year, and that is the aesthetics, the atmosphere, and the tone that they managed to build up. Interestingly enough, while this is the thing that really draws me into the film, it's also the source of what I think causes the bulk of the problems for a lot of people. This movie is so utterly committed to its almost whimsical tone, and that's not something you see a whole lot. So when we have performances that are not meant to be even remotely naturalistic, there's a lot of criticism that gets thrown for that. But those weird performances are just a byproduct of the film's intended tone. Now, I'm not saying they did this perfectly, but overall, the feel of the movie really landed for me. First of all, just look at this. I am such a sucker for these sorts of visuals, and I think a big part of why I love it so much is because it doesn't feel like it's binding itself to realism at all, and is instead just trying to reflect the way our brains imagine these fairy tales when we hear them as children. This super strong beam of light pouring directly into the window and spotlighting the wall isn't something you'd really ever see, but it's a part of the film's story, highlighting where the root of the thing that will drive the narrative along is hiding, and that sort of thing makes it so that the aesthetic and lighting choices in the film are inseparable from the actual story itself, and I really enjoy that. I'm gonna go full-on Rocklin Graves mode for a second here, and gush about an empty wall for a second, because I love what they did with this. That unnatural beam of light is a big part of it, but it's the overall way that they managed to make whatever is behind this wall feel significant that I find makes this so good, with one simple design choice going such a long way. So if we look around the room, and you're gonna have to really squint because Jesus, this movie is darker than it needed to be. I don't know why they did that. This is such like a heightened stylistic movie. I'm all for like really dark nighttime scenes. It's something I talk about liking a lot of the time, just as long as you're in the right viewing conditions, but it just doesn't feel necessary here. But yeah, just look around the room. There's pictures on the walls, a cabinet against one, shelves hung up. It's the kind of thing you'd expect to see on a bedroom wall. But then we look at the wall where shit will go down. Nothing. It's completely blank, with one small exception. These two lamps hanging on the wall, and man, do I ever love this. This kind of thing is what you'd expect to see on either side of like a fireplace or some sort of display like that. So when you see them, even if there's nothing between them, it makes it feel like there's supposed to be, and gives the blank space on the wall a great sense of significance. They literally made a blank wall the most interesting thing in the room. That great aesthetic isn't limited to Peter's room, thankfully, with the rest of the house also having this really unsettling dollhouse feeling that makes it feel like Peter's life is a sort of facade, like this is just a mask being worn to cover his parents' lies. None of it feels warm or homely, with rooms often feeling like they're too big for the things that are in them, which results in a great sort of empty in-between feeling to it all. They do such a great job of turning the house itself into a really prevalent character, with scenes like when his parents are having a secret conversation in the living room and their gargantuan shadows are cast on either side of the peering Peter on the staircase. And while I'm talking about that scene, oh my god, when his mom looks at him, it sends a jolt through me every time. It's so creepy. The Coraline comparisons certainly don't end there, but the house feels like it's used in a lot of similar ways to that movie. It's the sort of feeling that I think can be fairly difficult to recreate effectively in a live-action setting, but they managed to do a really great job of it. None of this is to mention that backyard in the form of Tim Burton's Wet Dream, which does so much heavy lifting for building up that awesome Halloween fable feel the movie's going for. I respect the dedication to the craft to allow so much of your property be taken up by pumpkins. I mentioned Coraline a second ago, and I think it's pretty clear that the movie was inspired by that movie. The really off-putting parents, the sense that some secret is being kept, the walls of the house holding a darkness inside. It's cool to see this sort of thing, because Coraline is, easily one of the greatest movies ever to enter the rotation of autumnal watches, so if something can manage to evoke any similar feelings, it's a really good sign. And no, I'm not saying the movie's as good as Coraline, I'm just saying there's some similarities. Even when the movie isn't able to lean on a location that feels automatically creepy, the bleak, desaturated look of the film when we're not at the house does a great job of keeping the feel of things consistent, even if the narrative doesn't always hold up as well outside of that main story, but I'll get to that. One of the things that's super important to have during your annual spooky time festivities is the proper music to match. I always have something atmospherically appropriate on while I'm decorating or setting things up, and the score from Drum and Lace for this film is something that I could easily have on loop while I'm decorating for Halloween. This soundtrack perfectly evokes that fabled feel of the movie's story and setting, feeling like something that you'd begin to hear in your head when someone starts telling a scary story around a campfire at this time of year. It's a super solid mixture of soft, eerie piano that does an equally good job with the Halloween tone as it does bringing out the tragedy of the story. They mix in some great ghostly vocals and atmospheric synth pads. It's just about everything I could ask for. Now, and this is not a slight against you, you know how I feel about you, the movie does have a very mixed reception. And I do think I'm probably preaching to the choir a bit on the aesthetic side of things, since I don't imagine there's too much of an argument had about whether or not the movie looks and sounds good. The issues are mostly had when it comes to the story and the characters, and while I do have some issues here, and I do understand why it's not for everyone, I also think that a lot of the creative decisions here that were fully intentional get misunderstood for bad writing. Let's talk about Peter's parents first, since I think that will perfectly sum up both why I enjoy this movie so much and also why so many people don't. First of all, casting-wise, no notes whatsoever. We've got Anthony Starr and Lizzie Kaplan, both of whom always do great work and so clearly understood the assignment here. Both of them at times can be really over the top, but that's entirely by design. The core of this movie is not meant to be remotely grounded. It's a very heavily stylized, heightened fable, and the thing with something like that is that you really do have to fully commit to the extreme, otherwise it will just fall apart, which, maybe foreshadowing a little bit. Lizzie Kaplan's performance in particular is the one where I've noticed the most criticism, but ironically, she gives my favorite performance of the movie.
Pumpkin. For our pumpkin.
She has the ability to be really off-putting with these crazed looks in her eyes, the frantic panic she shows whenever things get close to being revealed or she realizes that Peter is beginning to uncover the secret in the walls, and even during smaller moments like when Mark asks if she's done something different with the stew on this particular night, her reaction feels like something coming from someone hanging by the thinnest imaginable thread. Like any upset to what she's expecting or is aware of is the deepest disturbance to her, which is fair by this point in the story.
Did I do something different with the soup?
Yeah. Kaplan is just so good at playing this insanely over-the-top character, but still managing to bring some really effective weight with moments like when she first realizes that her worst nightmares are coming true, which I will unashamedly admit is a scene that has given me chills every single time I've seen it.
What did she tell you?
It's a performance with a great mixture of humor, crippling anxiety, and an attempt to feel like she's still in control despite the circumstances being so outside of hers.
You just wait till your father gets home.
Carol is just an extremely entertaining character, and Lizzie Kaplan delivered on what this role was asking for pretty much perfectly. Anthony Starr is also fantastic, even if his character isn't quite as frantic and all over the place as Carol, which makes him a little less interesting to me. I will admit, I'm not overly familiar with him. I'm sorry, I have not seen The Boys, so I have no idea what he's normally like, but again, with Carol, you get this sense that he starts off feeling like he actually is in control, and then tries real hard to maintain that facade even when he begins to realize that he actually isn't. I love how he's basically a caricature of what you'd expect to see from an evil parent in a horror movie. One of the main complaints that I see about this movie is that Peter's parents are just ridiculous, don't feel remotely believable, and are too cartoonish, which, like, yeah, they are, but that is the point. That's not the only spot where the movie pushes the drama of something way further than you'd really need to for the sake of the tone they're going for with the... I'm sorry. Sorry, I need a moment. With the scene of Hector's murder being one of them. It's like I can still hear him. Like, this is a scene of a bully smashing Peter's pumpkin, and yet they shoot and edit it like what we're watching is the climactic last straw of someone who suffered a lifetime of wrongdoing and visceral torment. Hector's murder is the highest assault that could be committed, and this is a major turning point of this grand story. That's the tone of a scene of a pumpkin being smashed, so it feels perfectly appropriate that we'd have characters who are pushed to the nth degree to go along with that. It's that ridiculously overly dramatic tone of the film that I find makes it so much fun on top of the hyper-stylized look of so many scenes. This approach to almost every scene of the film also has this really cool effect of getting us used to things feeling really dramatic and crazy, even when they otherwise wouldn't be to this extent. So then when we get scenes where shit actually goes down, there's this cool moment of being like, yeah, that's also crazy, like when the pumpkin was smashed, but then it'll creep up on you suddenly what just happened is actually so much worse than what we'd seen before. It's like you'll break through the stylistic veil for a moment and get a sort of like tonal jump scare, for lack of a better word, and I really like that. It's sort of the opposite of what you'd normally expect, where most of it would be naturalistic, and then it would get really intense and weird for certain scenes, but they reverse it. Okay, man, I usually eat before recording, but I totally forgot today. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna take a little break.
Evan!
What the hell was that?
Evan!
Hello?
Alright, look, I'm not gonna pretend to be intimidating. Please just give me the fucking lamp. Or just leave it on the curb or something so I can take it and go home. Doc's already super pissed at me for taking this long.
Goulash?
In the rotting flesh.
I'm not giving you the lamp.
Come on, man, please!
No, I want it.
You know this isn't gonna end well for you. Or me, for that matter.
We'll just have to see about that, won't we?
Ugh.
God damn it! Don't look at me like that. I'm not giving him the lamp. Now, I've been pretty careful to word what I'm saying with the mostly qualifier. Because while the movie does a great job of committing to its tone for everything at the house, the main subplot of the film honestly feels really out of place, like it was added in after the fact in an attempt to add some more drama to the story and give Peter some help during the final act that also kind of feels like a weird extension after the story's already finished. Miss Devine is Peter's teacher. Miss Devine is Peter's teacher, and if her involvement with the story had been less prevalent, it could have served as a really cool brief scene or two to contrast the heightened drama of everything at the house with something more grounded to really amp up how weird everything else feels. Instead, she winds up having a pretty solid chunk of screen time and being pivotal to the film's story, and it's here where my biggest issue with Cobweb comes in. Cleopatra Coleman, aside from having a fucking sick name, is not a bad actor. She's quite good, but her performance feels so out of place. Like she was ripped from an entirely different movie or just pulled off the street and dumped into a story where the way she's handled just takes away from the rest of it. I can understand why the movie's tone isn't for everyone, but I really do think that if Miss Devine had not been so involved in the film overall, it probably would have been easier settling into how insanely weird most of Cobweb feels. As is, if you're not having an easy time getting into the vibe and then the movie keeps cutting to this character that is played like completely straight, it's probably just going to make the heightened elements of the film even more frustrating than they would be if it had completely committed to them. I think it would have been fine to have her be a more naturalistic character during the opening section of the film, but as things go on, she really needed to be handled differently in order to avoid this weird tonal dissonance that she causes. Every time I watch this movie, I'll be getting sucked into that fairy tale feel, and then it feels like I keep having to sit back for a second and reacquaint myself with it every time we cut to a scene with Miss Devine. I like the idea of the movie using a couple of moments played more straight to highlight this strangeness elsewhere, but it just happens too much here and winds up hurting my ability to get completely invested in the movie's tone. The movie does struggle a fair bit with creating a smooth narrative, and while Miss Devine is a pretty good example of that, it's also clear when we get into the third act of the film, which largely wraps up the main plot that we've been following to that point and just brings in some characters for a bunch of kills before the movie wraps up. Now, that's not to say it's entirely bad, but it's definitely a clunky transition going into the final act of the movie. I want to take a second to talk about whether or not this thing actually manages to be scary before we fully dive into that. And I'd like to really emphasize this because while I don't think that overall it's all that freaky, there is one sequence in particular that I really do think is one of the most effective scare scenes in recent memory. We have some undoubtedly unsettling moments, largely with Lizzie Kaplan just being insane, and I found a lot of their reactions to be pretty creepy, but it's a dream that Peter has that delivers something that has not left my mind since I saw it. This scene feels like something that was just plucked straight out of my childhood nightmares, starting with the really creepy moment of Mark standing in the corner with his eyes flittering at an unnatural speed like he's a wind-up doll, but it's Carol's part in this that really makes it land. Her posture, the way she's holding her hands, the lighting of it, the way they cut the lights off and keep her running footsteps going for longer than they should, only to reveal her running at Peter in such an unnatural and nightmarish way. It's awesome. This is such a good jump scare. This is one of those very rare scenes where I saw it and immediately rewound it because I wanted to watch it again. The movie's got its fair share of off-putting stuff, but it's this scene that I'd consider to be the most chilling. We'll get into the third act in a sec, but we really need to talk about Peter first for the proper context. First of all, Woody Norman does a damn good job in the role, and the main thing that he needed to make sure happened was that we could come to care about this character very quickly. He's a kid who's very easy to want to help, and that's about all we needed here. Throughout the film, the voice in the walls convinces him that his parents are evil and are going to kill him, which the movie plays with in some fun ways.
It smells like cinnamon.
Well, be careful. Not everything's as sweet as it seems.
Sarah, Peter's sister, knows exactly how to twist their parents' behavior into a way that will cause him to believe her. I really enjoyed the way the movie felt like it was sort of tricking us from the start, with the control that Peter's parents have over his life being a huge focus, even from the opening scene where Carol is showing him how to play the piano. It seems rather innocuous, but to have our first moment be her correcting him and controlling what he does is a good idea. And there's also the scene in the bathroom where the way they talk to him is waving every red flag imaginable.
Lord, we love you.
And we forgive you.
Then there's also this cool sequence of him being scared by a spider in the classroom early on, and Miss Devine helps him free it by showing him that they aren't scary and can be cared for, which is a cool reflection of how he goes into freeing Sarah at the end thinking that it will be like that, who's also very much so designed to look spider-esque. They do a good job with that kind of foreshadowing. She wants to embolden Peter and help him learn to fight back so that it can eventually trick him into killing his parents and letting it out. Starting off with him being pushed to fight back against his bully, which is one of the moments I was talking about where it feels like we see through the fairy tale veil for just a brief scene, and it's pretty messed up. That brings us to the point where Peter finally decides to commit to what Sarah has been asking him to do, which is probably the best scene of the whole movie. It's always so much fun to see how on edge Carol is by this point. But again, we get one of those moments where you just pause and go like, oh, holy shit.
Smell it.
It smells like cinnamon.
Mark's slow realization of what happened with the foreshadowing from earlier about the rat poison smelling like cinnamon leads into such a wild sequence of him dying on the table, and once again, Lizzie Kaplan is fucking truly scary as she chases Peter up the stairs with a knife in hand. It's here where Peter finally frees Sarah, and I absolutely love how they go about this scene with her small, innocent voice falling away into a dreadful cackle as soon as there's nothing blocking her way anymore. It's a really solid reveal, but it is also at this point where the movie sort of just stumbles its way to the finish line. The bully brings his family to go along and bludgeon Peter to death in his own home. Who the fuck is this guy? Anyway, at this point, his parents are dead and Sarah is out, and the rest of the movie is essentially used as nothing more than a playground for Sarah to fuck some people up before the movie ends. It's pretty clunky, especially since the whole narrative shifts to something that felt rather peripheral, but what saves it from completely ruining the movie is the way they go about handling Sarah's screen presence, which is really fleeting and hard to get a good grasp of because of the way she moves. You have some gnarly shit happening to these dudes throughout the sequence, and not even the bully is spared when it's all said and done. It's mostly just a sort of on-rails roller coaster sequence for the movie to have some fun with the villain that it's been building up to the whole time, and while it holds pretty much no narrative relevance, it is still fun. And you can still hinge on that style of the movie. You have to really be able to enjoy the aesthetic here to not get annoyed by this. What's a little less fun is the actual conclusion to the movie. What it feels like happened here is that they got to the scene of Peter poisoning his parents and then were like, alrighty, so, what now? I mean, we could fuck some people up. Yeah, that works. It's a horror movie. Let's get some splatters going. And... man, fuck, I don't know. Let's trap Sarah in the basement and call it a day. Sarah makes an attempt to put Peter into the trap that she lived in, but Miss Divine, of course, shows up to save the day. There's a bit of a tussle, and then Sarah winds up back in the trap where the script realizes that it had some ideas it hadn't put anywhere yet and just dumps them all right at the end in a really awkward feeling exposition dump and a warning to Peter. They do this twice, actually. This just happened like a couple minutes ago up in Peter's bedroom.
Every tap in the wall, you'll think of me.
Some of it I don't mind too much, and again, because it kind of feels like they're trying to evoke the feeling of a storybook, oftentimes these kinds of narrative dumps happen, so it doesn't feel entirely out of place, but I just wish they'd tried harder to find a smoother way to have this information revealed to us. I'm not saying that it has to be some subtle, nuanced thing that you have to dig to figure out, since again, the movie isn't trying to be subtle at all, but the way they went about it just feels really awkward and makes the film's final moments feel extremely rushed. Everything up to when Sarah's let out feels like it was really well thought out, and then things just sort of lose steam from there until this sequence, and then the movie is over before you've even realized it. Now, to be clear, this isn't something that kills the movie for me. It's just something that I wish had been given more thought and, maybe sat with longer before jumping into production to smooth things out and make the final act feel less janky. I still do have a decent enough time watching Sarah go apeshit on these people, and since I am a sucker for storybook aesthetics, I can still latch onto that and have a good time during this section, but structurally, it's pretty messy and anemic. The other issue is the design for Sarah, which looks really great, except for when we see her face. Now, there is one exception to that, and that's the reveal of her face bathed in shadow when Peter first opens the door behind the clock. This I absolutely love, and if they had played more with this kind of vague imagery of her, that would have worked super well for me, because this leaves a lot to the imagination, and this kind of just looks a little goofy. Part of me does kind of like how weird it looks, but I think it would have been so much more effective to just leave her face in shadow and hidden by the hair instead of going this route with it. I don't know, it's kind of cheesy and dumb in a charming sort of way, but I do think that they would have been better off keeping it more obscured. Also, does it make sense that Carol would birth this thing? No. Do I even care remotely? Fuck no. It's a really solid story for the Halloween season that I just feel like wasn't told as well as it could have been after a point, but it's still one that I have in regular rotation for spooky season. Cobweb gets a lot of hate, and I had a number of people saying they were surprised to see me praise it when I talked about the movies I'd be watching in October, and well, I can understand why not everyone liked it. I hope this video can help anyone who didn't enjoy it understand why so many others did. It's a super stylish, atmospheric Halloween fairy tale that arguably would have worked better if it was like an hour-long episode of an anthology series, but I'm just so grateful to have something like this when the mood hits. Cobweb is awesome, and if you didn't like it when it came out and haven't rewatched it, I'd say give it another chance on a brisk fall day and see if it clicks for you. Also, why the hell didn't they release this in October? It came out in like August or something like that. Not the time. Okay. Finally. The ritual can begin.
How's the harvest moon going for you?
You rat! Give it back!
You stole it from me! I warned you, no givesy backsies!
I cast a protection charm on it. How did Goulash even get it?
Oh, Goulash was taking too long. I had to send my idiot nephew Cody to retrieve it. Actually, come to think of it, I don't even know where Goulash is.
My Halloween is ruined.
Well, next time get your own cursed lamp. They're hardly a dime a dozen, and I needed it for, something. I'll figure it out later, I guess. Anyway, the barriers between the real and the unreal are getting awfully thin, so I should get going. Don't ever try and steal from me again. Happy Halloween.
Think you can help me out of here?
Jesus Christ!
Where? Oh, it was just a figure of speech. Look, it's a lot tighter in here than I was expecting, and it's really dark. I could really use a hand.
I thought you were gone already.
I think I've been going in circles, but I can't quite tell.
You know, I actually kind of like the thought of being able to sleep in the walls every now and again, so give me a second to find an entrance and I'll help you out.
What?
Be there in a few.
You fucking weirdo.
Thanks for watching through to the end. I hope you enjoyed the video enough that you want to see more, and if that's the case, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell because YouTube can sometimes suck at recommending channels. A huge thank you to my wonderful Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members who are a massive help in allowing me to continue committing as much time as I can to making these videos. If you want to gain access to things like behind the scenes material or gain early access to my videos, consider supporting me on either platform. As always, thank you for stopping by Rocklin Graves. I hope you've enjoyed your stay.